Nation! You're now listening to the most opinionated, the most exciting, the most son of a Schmidt. You guys actually do something useful here, right? Like, is anything you do even beneficial to someone? Whatever. Now to the show that literally has tens, that's right, tens of followers. The show that brings the Ozone Radio Network to levels of mediocrity that only Michigan fans would know. This is the Sons of Schmidt, starring Mike Meals and Brandon Zimmerman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Welcome back, Sons of Schmidt fans. This is Season 3, Episode 12 of the Sons of Schmidt here on the Ozone Radio Network. I'm your host from Hazen Cannon, Mike Meals. Joining me, as always, is my good buddy, Brandon Zimmerman. What's going on, Brandon? How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Michael. Things are good out here. Nice little snowstorm for a little bit after my weekend in Phoenix, so get to see all the spectrum of the temperature scale.
If it makes you feel any better, we're having cold weather relative pains because it's supposed to freeze tonight here in Katy and in Houston. So something I haven't had to do in a long time. I'm actually wearing sweatpants in my house because it's so cold. So I feel you, man.
I mean, cold weather for you, if it's normally a innie, it's like a double innie now.
It's like a triple innie. Like it is coming out my throat. So... yeah, this is exciting. Thanks for that, buddy. Jackass. All right, man. So as I mentioned, this is the 11th episode of our season this year. This week, number 9, Ohio State, who is now 9-1, 6-1 in the conference. They dropped from number 8 with an impressive win over Michigan State. Yeah, they're 10 in the college football rankings, but I don't go by that one. Anyways, Ohio State managed to drop after they beat down on Michigan State 26-6. We go to Maryland. We're playing in College Park this year. Maryland is currently 5-5. They're 3-4 in the Big Ten. They're 5th in the Big Ten East. Game is Saturday the 17th at 12 noon on ABC. Initial thoughts before we get into anything of importance. You got anything you want to put on record real quick?
No, I'm ready to jump into this one. That Michigan State game was a big win for this program, and I liked some of the stuff I saw, so I can't wait to get into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as we get going, the first thing, of course, that we always want to know is what are you drinking? I know you said you have something new for the guys, so tell us a little bit about what's in your bourbon glass.
Yeah, I keep on trying to get some new stuff for you guys. This week I am going with Breakers Bourbon Whiskey out of Santa Barbara County, California. It's not too bad. I mean, it tastes like most of the bourbons and whiskeys that are distilled somewhere else, and they kind of just make it their own. So nothing too special.
Tastes better than Wildfires, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hey, man, I made a mistake a couple weeks ago, and I lived by this mistake. You know, we recorded a show, and I did not drink that night, and Ohio State managed to lose. So I've been put back into my corrected ways. I'm actually on a new bottle, but I'm still drinking that same moonshine from here in Texas. Like, this is some good stuff, man. I've been a really big fan of this.
Keep it going.
Hey, until something changes, right?
You should bring a bottle with you next week.
Hey, that's a preview that we hadn't got to yet. So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. First things first, we talk every time that they come out. I know you've told me multiple times this year that you flat out don't give a shit, but college football playoff rankings were released earlier tonight. Not a big change here. Bama's 1, Clemson's 2, Notre Dame's 3, Michigan's 4, Georgia's 5, Oklahoma 6, LSU 7, Wazoo 8, West Virginia 9, and Ohio State fell to 10. UCF is up to 11th. Any thoughts on the college football playoff rankings?
I still don't give a shit. No, I mean, it's actually starting to become a little bit humorous. Like, I'm starting to pay attention a little more and more just because, like, I'm curious to see how long they can stand LSU up there. I mean, like at some point, like you expect them to start dropping. As far as Ohio State goes, I still don't care because like they're going to move up if they win. So that's all that they've got to do. And they'll start jumping teams, and West Virginia is going to drop a game. Wazoo is going to drop a game. Georgia or Bama is going to drop a game. So, like, it's all going to work out. So I don't care about Ohio State, but, like, I am kind of fascinated by their, like, stick-to-itiveness of getting LSU into the top 5 somehow.
They are bound and determined to get as many SEC schools up there as they can. They are bound and determined to, for some reason, still give Wazoo an edge, and they are bound and determined to make that back-to-back week matchup that it's going to end up being between OU and West Virginia just super important.
Yeah, so that's all they're doing is trying to set up for stuff. So
yeah, and we've said it every week. I'll say it again. Ohio State wins, they're in. That's all it comes down to. They will move right up those rankings. They win this week, next week, and then the week after in Indianapolis against Northwestern. So that's really all I have to say on the college football playoff rankings. Anything else you want to get to before we take our break, pause, and come back and do segment 1?
Nope. Let's move into it.
Sounds good, man. We'll be right back.
This is the Ozone Radio Network, a Hayes and Cannon production. For the latest episodes of all your favorite podcasts covering Buckeye Nation, look for the Ozone Radio Network on iTunes, Google Play, iHeartRadio, and Speaker. You can also find the latest episodes by clicking on the Hayes and Cannon tab at theozone.net. Once again, here are the Sons of Schmidt.
All right, Brandon. So as I was talking about before we took our break here, Ohio State knocked off Michigan State 26-6. It was definitely, there were things in this game that I was impressed by. Ohio State definitely has shown that they are making a conceited effort to correct some of the mistakes that they had midway through the season leading up to the loss at Purdue. There was definitely a dedication against a tough defense to still try to run the ball. Ohio State was playing in, not ideal weather. It was very cold. It was kind of windy. But, Ohio State still stuck to the game plan of the things that we had said that they needed to work on, and they obviously noticed. Ohio State, obviously, like I said, 26-6 is the win. Michigan beat Michigan State 21-7. It was a super impressive win when Michigan did that, and then Ohio State does it, and it's crap. So, man, what was your takeaway on the game with Sparty, and what's your thoughts on all this, man?
I think there were a lot of good things that we saw from the Buckeyes, and it kind of goes back to 2 weeks ago against the Cornhuskers, where you kind of saw little things here and there. Goes into Michigan State. You're seeing more and more of some of the questions that we all had going into that bye week get answered slowly. You expected coming out of the break, or anyone should have expected that Dwayne Haskins' passing numbers were going to fall off just a little bit. I mean, you aren't going to continue having him throw for 400 yards and work on the run game at the same time. So you kind of expected it all to kind of come back a little bit. It was, I know stats wise, it wasn't the greatest for Dwayne Haskins, but I know, like, I had tweeted with you about it, but like first half, I feel like there were a lot of drops by wide receivers that could have made Dwayne Haskins have some pretty big games. I mean, I know we like to give him a hard time sometimes that he throws the ball too hard, or he doesn't know the situation. Sometimes he gets too amped up. But I thought the first half against Michigan State, Dwayne Haskins was putting some balls into some tight windows, and his wide receivers were dropping him. I mean, just in the first half, you can count on third down, there were 2 passes that went through the wide receiver's hands that were perfectly placed between 3 dudes that should have been caught. There was another one on third down where Olive like slipped when he was coming out of his break, and he got up and Dwayne Haskins hit him right in the chest where he dropped it because he was kind of getting up like at the same time. I mean, like if those would have converted, those would have extended some drives early on, and that could have even been even more of a, blowout type of game. It wouldn't have taken the offense as long to get going. Offensive line, I don't know how 3 of them graded out as champions. I thought the offensive line like struggled big time. I mean, Michigan State has a good front 7. So like you expect some struggles, but I mean, I even put in my notes that it's not the defense, it's not the running game, it's not the quarterback play. The offensive line is the reason why Ohio State's not going to win a championship this year unless things change. I mean, they can get by with all those other things. Let's see. What other notes do I have offensively? I thought it was awesome to see. It wound up getting called back, but Dwayne Haskins had a play in the first half where it was 3rd down, running towards the sideline, and he like lowered his shoulder and cut back in and went right at a DB and got the first down. It was called back, but
I don't know if he lowered his shoulder or his head, but yes, I know what play you're talking about. Very much so.
He initiated contact with a defender.
Yeah, there we go. That's the good route. We'll call it that.
Which kind of freaked me out, but then it got called back. But it was good to see him, willing to do that. We saw it last year against Michigan that he is able to do those type of things. This year's not so much. So it's good. I mean, maybe now that we're later on into the year, Dwayne Haskins can be more willing to put his body on the line, especially since he sees Tate Martell come in on these short yardage situations that may like light a fire under his ass and make him become more of the runner that everyone knows that he could. I was frustrated the first half why everything, like every run play, every passing play was between the tackles. And every pass play was like a short slant I'm across the middle. Every run play was straight up the middle, and it all was getting blown up. Like that's where you're playing into Michigan State's strengths if you're doing that. I mean, like they've got a solid front 7, a very good front 7 that, plays downhill, can stop the run, but they aren't the most athletic dudes. I mean, they got some guys in the secondary that can move like Justin Lane and stuff, but they aren't the guys that you're going to see running sideline to sideline. And the Buckeyes figured that out later on in the second half, and that's where they started to have the success by giving Mike Weber the ball and having him attack the edges. And I thought that worked out perfectly. And so I was really just disappointed in the first half to see that, where a lot was trying to attack the middle, and that's just not against any team with the Buckeyes. I don't think that's how the Buckeye offensive running game or passing game is at its best, is going up the middle, because that's where you got Pridgeon and Knox and Jordan that have all been kind of struggling up the middle there. What else offensively do we got?
Well, I think I was going to say, before you get into Johnny Dixon here, one of the things that you really have to touch on, and you had briefly got it there, Ohio State had ran 45 rushing plays on Saturday. So it was definitely a dedication, even if it was running into a wall a bunch. 45 carries. They ended the game with 120 yards as a team, but the 2 running backs combined for 132 yards. And, of course, Campbell had that end-around touchdown, which, you can call it a pass, but it was a run play. And so that was definitely a nice thing. The other one that I put on here, and I just want to touch on this before we go back to Dixon. Wow, my voice just cracked like I'm 9 years old. Haskins went over 60% completion. So I think that's a big key also. He was just over it, but he was at 61.5%. So those were the big takeaways I saw in the offense. Now, I know you got some Johnny Dixon notes for us, so I'll go ahead and turn it back over to you, man. What's your take on Dixon here?
Well, and the thing with Haskins too is he got that was at 61%. That's even with those drops. Like I thought he played a really good game for the defense that he played on Saturday, and I don't feel like he's getting nearly enough credit for how good of a game he actually played. especially going back to Johnny Dixon. Like Johnny Dixon, then on top of those 3 that I talked about before early on, Johnny Dixon had a huge drop later on. He actually had quite a few drops. I think I counted 3 or 4 drops for him. But the one was like second half where Haskins threw across the field. And that's one of those ones where like Johnny Dixon catches that and he's running for a good 30 yards or so at least, and that's where Johnny Dixon kind of does his damage. And to drop that one kind of really killed that drive. And Johnny Dixon just had a rough game. And it happens. I mean, we saw that with Austin Mack against TCU. We've seen it with Paris Campbell a few times. Even KJ Hill, as steady as he is, has had games where like he's just not the same. So Johnny Dixon's going to be fine, but that was easily probably the worst game that Johnny Dixon's played in that we've seen him at Ohio State.
Yeah. The one question I have for you here, I know I was looking at some stats earlier. Ohio State is currently second in the Big Ten at converting third downs. They're at 46%. Michigan is ahead of them. They're at 50%. Going into Maryland and Michigan, the fact that we are under 50% on converting third downs, do you see that being an issue, or is that something you think that they'll continue to work on also?
I think the issue is, like, when you really watch the games too, it's not just third downs. It's so many 3rd and 1s, 3rd and 2s. I mean, there's very rare times that you see Ohio State in 3rd and like super long situations, So, I mean, it does concern me, but I do feel better about it because you have seen some changes with the 3rd down offense these last couple weeks, and then throwing Tate Martell in there last weekend, I think is only the beginning of how that's going to look too. So it's definitely concerning, but I think it's one of those things that's going in the right direction where we couldn't have said that a few weeks ago, So I think it's going to be good by the end of the year, hopefully.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. Anything else you have on the offense before we flip to the other side of the ball?
No. I thought Terry McLaurin, I just got to throw a shout out to him because I've been so hard on him, but I think these last 2 weeks he's stepped up a lot offensively with Austin Mack out and Ben Victor really kind of being a non-factor. I think Terry McLaurin stepped up big in that wide receiver room.
All right. Sounds good, man. So looking at the defense, Ohio State held Michigan State to 274 yards on offense. Obviously, the defense, the eye test was better, I would say. It was pointed out, I forget who it was that said it, but, the Michigan State offense is the kind of offense where Tough Borland is able to play his kind of a game. He's not trying to chase a Trace McSorley around the field. The defense, I was happy with their play. There's always going to be some things that weren't great, but it was definitely an improved effort out of the defense. Probably their best game this season, from what I have, what I would say. So, just thoughts on the Ohio State defense against Michigan State. What do you got for us there, man?
Well, it's funny because the first bullet I have for the defense, and I know it wasn't me that you were talking about because we didn't talk about this, but first bullet for me is this is the type of team Borland excels against. So like he's able,
perfect.
Yeah, I mean it's just this is it because you've got a team that pounds the ball. They aren't too quick sideline to sideline, and Tough Borland is able to just kind of plug the gaps, and not worry about things going outside the tackle box and stuff. So
for those of you that are listening, by the way, the bourbon in Brandon's glass must be fairly decent because he just poured himself a refill on the video as we're recording. So
hey, don't call me out, man. I'm trying to talk here. Yeah,
well, that explains why you backed away from the mic. Yeah, it was pretty funny to watch. So anyway,
all right.
Continue.
Another thing, Kendall Sheffield, I thought he struggled pretty bad on Saturday. It's not something we really see too much from him. I mean, a lot of it was like what Joel Klatt was talking about with that bailout technique. But it just seemed like Kendall Sheffield was out of position a lot of times. And we really haven't seen that too much from him. And maybe it's like a Johnny Dixon type thing where it's just a bad game for him. Whatevs. We just move on from it. I thought, so I know a lot of this people are complaining here lately about the lack of sacks, and I don't even think Ohio State had a sack on Saturday. With that said, I thought Chase Young played a hell of a game on Saturday. I mean, like statistically, I don't even know where he was at. I could pull it up real quick, but like, I don't think he was, he probably didn't have too many tackles for losses. He probably didn't, he didn't have any sacks, but it seemed like he was in getting QB hurries time after time. And he was creating a lot of havoc back there, forcing some quick throws, forcing some errant throws. So stats-wise, he may not even be there, but I thought Chase Young played a hell of a game and probably easily his best game outside of that Penn State game where he just completely took over and dominated. And then Draymond Jones, too. I mean, you can't say enough about the season that he's having. I mean, Draymond Jones for the season after that game, he's at 30 tackles, 10 tackles for losses, 6.5 sacks, 1 interception, 2 pass breakups, 3 fumble recoveries, 4 QB hurries, and a forced fumble. So, and that's out of a defensive tackle spot. So I think Draymond Jones is quietly having one of the better seasons in college football for a defensive lineman, especially from the defensive tackle spot.
Well, and one of the things to add on to this, after the Michigan State game, Ohio State is only allowing opposing offenses to convert 30% of their third down. So it's definitely as bad as the defense seems to have been at times this year, and they have been downright horrible. I think they're starting to put a little bit of this together. They're starting to tie it up at the right time. Like you said, Chase Young had a very impactful game. If not statistically great, he was very impactful. Tough Borland, he was doing a good job. Brendan White, who, got the start, ended up, having just another solid, really good game that allowed Jordan Fuller to have a good game. One of the things I saw, and I thought it was kind of ironic, but Brendan White's played only 7 quarters at safety this year. He's 9th on the team in tackles. So
that's awesome.
He's definitely putting some stuff together. And yes, that makes you question, well, why wasn't he playing earlier and whatever? I'm not here to ask that question for you just yet. But, it's definitely good to see the defense starting to tie it off at the right time and getting ready, because Maryland is going to be a warm-up game for Michigan. I mean, that's what it is. And I know Michigan State's offense really isn't that good, especially when you knock out their starting quarterback and he's playing hurt. But, this was a very positive sign in my mind. For the eye test, it was a very good game for the defense.
Well, and the one thing with the defense that I really liked, besides them actually like taking good angles to ball carriers and stuff, was they looked like they cared. There were 11 dudes on that field that actually gave a damn for the first time in a while. There was swagger. There was, emotion. So it was fun. Like, I had fun watching it. Granted, like I told you guys, I wasn't able to watch the game live. So I'm watching it, like, knowing that Ohio State won by 20 points on the road. So it took a little bit of the stress away, but I had fun, especially in that second half. Like, after Drew Chrisman gave them so good a field position for the defense just to kind of pin their ears back, that they were having fun. And we saw it this week in the press conference. Urban Meyer was having fun. It's just more people having fun. And I think Ohio State needs more of that. So it was fun to see.
Absolutely. And that actually leads me to my next question for you. It was kind of funny that you went here, but with early this season, there was a lot of knock on Chase Young in particular, but on the defense and the team as a whole for a lack of discipline. And there were a lot of excessive penalties that should have been avoided. And some of them, false starts and that kind of stuff, whatever. But, there were the unsportsmanlike penalties, the penalties where, guys were celebrating and whatever. And those seemingly kind of went away, but it kind of took some of the edge off of the defense in particular, but the team total. Are we going to see that again, or do you think that they've mastered the way to slowly start bringing back the confidence and the swagger, but to keep it under control and not get the flags?
Well, and that was another note that I had was I was impressed, I guess you can say, that Ohio State didn't have a lot of penalties. Like, you're just so used to seeing like so many false starts and stuff. And we did see that. I think most of their penalties were false starts. I think Luke Farrell had 2 or 3 by himself. The Ohio State team only had 4 for the whole day. So I know Luke Farrell had at least 2 false starts. We had the hands to the face for, I think it was Pridgeon when Dwayne Haskins stayed in. And I think there was another false start in there at some point when like Tate Martell was in. So, I mean, that's what you expect from most teams. I mean, 4 penalties, most of them being false starts on the road, is kind of a normal thing. I mean, for 30 yards, I don't think too many people are too upset about that. So I thought it was a good game that Ohio State was able to play with their emotions and keep their emotions in check at the same time. Like you were saying, that's just not something that we have seen from this team. I think most people forget about how young this Ohio State team really is. And I think you've combined the youthfulness with the fact that you've got a natural confidence about you when you're a player that comes to Ohio State. I mean, you're a 4 or 5 star, highly touted kid. You were the best player on your high school team most of the time. You're finally getting your chance to play in front of 100,000+ people in front of the largest fan base in college football that travels to every away game. So I think there's bound to be a lot of, I don't know, almost like arrogance, and stupid plays where you're just too confident in your abilities. And I think Saturday definitely was the first time that we've seen them kind of keep that all in check. And it's a good place. I mean, a lot of young teams going into East Lansing and facing a great defense like Michigan State on the road in front of a rowdy crowd, especially in a game where Michigan State's in it all the way into pretty much late into the third quarter. And to see them be able to fight back, and just like they did against Penn State and just like they did against TCU, it's while keeping the penalties in check, was a good sign. And so hopefully it bleeds into next week where they keep it going with Maryland against a lesser opponent and can still keep that confidence without getting penalties.
All right, man. Real quick, before we get into our keys to the game, the over-unders that we did last week, is there anything else you want to get in here on Maryland and get on record before we go any further?
No. I mean, on Michigan State or Maryland? I feel like we're still –
I'm sorry, Michigan State. Did I say Maryland?
Right. Yeah,
Whatever.
You kind of threw me off. So I'm like, man, did I just black out for a good 30 minutes?
Did you just pour another glass of bourbon?
This is my 74th glass. It's been a crazy day. Yeah. So nothing else against Maryland. I thought it was a good time. Or against Michigan State. See,
now you're doing it.
All right.
So looking at the over-unders, our keys to the game last week, obviously, and I think this was the biggest key for me when I put this list together. That's why I had it on here. But Haskins, 60% completion rate. I've already touched on that one. He was over. Rushing yards, 150 yards. We knew it was going to be tough against a team like Michigan State with the number 1 running defense. Ohio State was under as a team. The running backs accounted for 132 yards. So still, we're in that ballpark, and it was the progressive steps forward. I was happy with that. Any receiver over 100 yards, none of them hit it. It was all under. And by the way, your J.K. Dobbins prediction was slightly, completely off. So, wrong. LOL.
I did not know that J.K. Dobbins pissed off somebody. So, my bad. I just felt like screen pass would be able to take the pressure off of Michigan State, how they kind of work the edges with Mike Weber. In my head, you do that with screen passes like you did against like Penn State, and they would be able to do it. But I guess I don't get paid to coach.
Yeah, that's why we do a podcast every week. So moving to the defense, the defensive line and linebackers for 3 sacks. We took under there. It was 0. The defense with the 2 turnovers, they actually had over. They had 3. And I was a little disappointed in myself because I told you there'd be a pick with a safety just playing in center field, and there'd be a fumble recovery, and they ended up having 2 fumble recoveries. So I was this close. I almost nailed that one exactly. When we get to our when we get to our Schmidt picks later in the show, I'm going to continue this wave where I was just on it last week because, spoiler alert, I was perfect. So
you did the Sloopcast once, and you're calling it the Sloop picks.
Well, first of all, the next line on my sheet here says Sloopcast, so you have to excuse me because we're getting ready to move into our questions that we had. And actually, we had one from our sister show, the Sloopcast. I don't know if this was Jared or Kyle, but they asked, and I want to get your opinion on this. On a scale of Rutgers to Purdue, how concerned about this game are you with Maryland?
I'm more in like an Indiana range, I think.
That's exactly where I was going. Yep.
Yeah, I think Ohio State will win. I don't think it really should be too close. I think they've got the ability to make a few big plays. They've got guys that can make big plays, especially if like Ty Johnson winds up playing. He's shown that he's kind of a big play guy. Tavon Jacobs is going to be looking to make plays, since he went to the barbecue last year. So,
all right. And everyone's invited again?
Yep. So he's going to have to make up for it. So, I put it at Indiana.
So you listened to the Sloopcast one time because I was on it, and you're going to drop in the barbecue reference that they open every show with? Is that how this is?
No, actually, that's not from that. I'm shouting out to our buddy Adam Borland, who has his statistical projections coming out tomorrow as we speak on Tuesday.
So little curveball there, huh?
Yeah, little curveball, little sneak peek. He mentions the barbecue. So
I imagine that if you're listening to Ohio State podcasts or reading Ohio State articles, there will be 1 or 2 other references to barbecue this week. So for a fat boy that lives in Texas, it makes me happy. So I'm all about this. Next question I have for you comes from @Stewart_E4US vet. He actually asked a question here, and we got some clarification on it. And then he threw in a follow-up that I'm going to get you. I don't know if you saw this or not, but he asked, will Haskins break the single-season passing record with a pass to Johnny Dixon that also puts Dixon over 1,000 yards for the year? Now, I'm not going to lie to you. This was a late question, so I didn't get a chance to look up and see how close Haskins was to that record. I know he's close, but I think he might be closer to it than what Haskins is, because Haskins, I think, what did we say, 857 for his career?
Dixon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Dixon. Man, I've had too much of the moonshine, but
Haskins, I feel like he is within 100 yards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't
somewhere in the 40 to 60. I think that would be awesome and stuff. I just don't think that's going to happen just because of how far Johnny Dixon is for his career away. I think it's going to happen pretty early for Dwayne Haskins. I wouldn't even be shocked if Urban Meyer and his staff came out and tried to get Dwayne Haskins at like first drive just so.
Well, he's a Maryland kid. And I feel
just get that off of the back of their mind. They can go into their run game and trying to get J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber going later. But that first drive, I think we've seen Dwayne Haskins come out and just throw the ball around and break the record as quickly as possible.
I see that, absolutely. Now, the follow-up to that, and it's funny that you mentioned the running backs, is there a path this year for Urban Meyer to have a 1,000-yard rusher? I was able to pull this real quick. J.K. Dobbins is at 712 for the season, and Weber, I don't know if I mistyped this, but it says 711, so they're both right there. I knew they were close. I didn't realize it was that close. Obviously, there's 2 games left, plus a Big Ten championship, plus a bowl game, if we knock off Michigan. But if that happens, I see probably both of them getting close to it. But let's go ahead and for a minute, let's not count the postseason against Maryland and Michigan. Do you see either, neither, or both potentially getting to 1,000 yards?
So just going with like the regular season and the Big Ten championship, I see at least one getting it. Like you, is if they go into bowl game, especially at playoffs. I see both of them getting. I mean, they're both within 300 yards of it. Once again, I'm going to just say, like, I don't think it's as bad as everyone makes it out to be. I think the running game's been fine. It's not the big plays like we expect, but then again, it's when you have a passing quarterback, like those stats have to come from somewhere. But let me just ask you this question, since we're on the question segment. If I sat there in August with everything going on, new quarterback, new offensive line, pretty much, no Urban Meyer on staff, and I told you that after 10 games, the quarterback would have almost 3,300 passing yards. The running backs would are combined for 1,700 scrimmage yards and 13 touchdowns. And the H-back position had combined for 119 catches, 1,400 yards, and 13 touchdowns. Would you consider that a successful season?
I would have told you that you're on the wrong show, because that must be like a Texas Tech podcast you were asking those questions on, to be completely honest.
You know, like,
there is no way that this offense, as good as they are coming into the season, you could have predicted those kind of numbers.
Yeah.
And you're not even taking into account the wide receivers who have had as a unit, a masterful season. So,
yeah. I mean, it's just, I know the commenters on the Ozone like to tell us that we're on crack all the time. Every writer for the Ozone is the dumbest person alive and everything. But
the good news is we all share the same crack.
Yeah. I mean, like, if we would have said that, someone honestly could have said that to us. I mean, we are 10 games into the season. And like I said, Dwayne Haskins, 3,280 yards, 33 touchdowns. Dobbins and Weber have combined for 1,423 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns on 5.01 yards per carry, and have 277 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. So 1,700 yards and 13 touchdowns combined from the running back spot. Campbell and Hill combined 119 catches, 1,406 yards, and 13 touchdowns. I mean, like, the offense.
You're not even taking into account C.J. Saunders.
No, all those other guys.
Mario McCall.
Terry McLaurin, Johnny Dixon, Luke Farrell, Rashard Berry.
Well, and here's the thing, dude. Dwayne Haskins has had an entire career this year. There are quarterbacks that have left Ohio State with less career yards and touchdowns than he has. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd take this in a heartbeat.
Well, then, I mean, just looking at that, like, look at the former starting quarterback for Maryland, Kasim Hill, who's out, and we will talk about that. But just compare them. I mean, Hill, 10 games into the season, 1,083 yards passing and 9 passing touchdowns. Like, it could be worse, fellas. So, Ohio State offense has struggled at times. There's no doubt about that. I mean, but I think right now they're working on things, and I think that this offense still has the ability to score points on anyone. Worst case, the running game gets stopped, and it's not against Michigan State where they felt like they were in control of it and they just kept on pushing at it, and they just throw the ball 40 times. And the offense is never the issue on this team. Like, the offense is never your problem. Like, the offensive line, maybe, like I said, that I've got a problem with them. The defense can cause problems for the Buckeyes, and they may be a reason why they lose games down the road. But Dwayne Haskins, J.K. Dobbins, Mike Weber, and the wide receivers are never going to be the reason why Ohio State loses a game.
Absolutely. All right, brother, is there anything else you want? Or are you ready to go on to Maryland? Because I know our sponsor this week is one of my absolute favorites. I cannot wait to let you guys hear this one. So is there anything else before I put a bow on Michigan State and send Sparty down the road? I really can't tie words together tonight.
No, I mean, just all I got to say is I'm sorry for the commercial.
All right, man. So on that note, let's take a pause. We got Reich's Crabs coming to you here for the Maryland game. So give us a couple minutes, and when you come back, hopefully you've stopped laughing long enough to hear what we have to say. So we'll be right back.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power.
We are Maryland's favorite crab catching team.
We're really shit.
Eating our fried foods won't turn you green.
Hey, let it rip.
When your hunger pains attack, Frank Rex crabs give no flap.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Fridgin' at our buffet still haunts our dreams.
He's a large cat.
Stefan Diggs was a scoring machine.
That's a fact, Jack.
Our crabs are never booed.
Give me a bite.
We'll leave you in a party.
Party!
Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Heroes in a half shell. Turtle power.
All right, Brandon, looking at segment number 2 here, we're looking forward to Maryland. Maryland comes into this game. They lost last week to IU, 34-32. Indiana had their magical special teams player of the week, who clearly has the greatest mid-range, non-pressure field goals, I guess. I have a spoiler alert. That's going to be in our Son of a Schmidt segment coming up here. So looking forward to the Maryland team. Their offense has been less than spectacular. Their defense has not been overly great. They do have some guys that have made some noise on the stat sheet. Maryland comes into this game. They're getting about 131 yards per game through the air. And as you mentioned earlier, Kasim Hill is now out for the season. It's tough luck for that guy. It's his second year. He's ended with a knee injury. So, you hate to see that happen, but he will not be playing Saturday. Maryland is averaging 234 yards on the ground. So, they have a 5.8 yards per carry rushing average coming into the season. When they're on defense, they're giving up about 181 yards a game through the air and another 161 yards on the ground. So nothing overly great, but nothing spectacular either at either of those that stick out to us. Looking through their offensive playmakers, they're going to have their backup quarterback in, who has thrown 31 pass attempts for the season. They've got a couple of running backs that are fairly decent, and I know there's one of them, Ty Johnson. He's questionable. He might not play. He wasn't listed on the 2-deep depth chart that came out. A couple of wide receivers that make big plays, but not a lot of them. Looking at their offense for Maryland, what's your first thought here? How does Ohio State stop Maryland from moving the ball?
Well, I think this is going to kind of play into Ohio State a little bit. I mean, Maryland's pretty much going to be an all run game team. Even with Pigram, he's more of a mobile guy than he is a passing quarterback. Even dating back to that Texas game last year at the beginning of the year when Maryland beat Texas once again. So he's more of a mobile quarterback who has given Ohio State problems in the past, but he's not the dynamic guy that Adrian Martinez or Taylor Martinez is, or Adrian Martinez or Trace McSorley.
I was going to say, we're just throwing all kinds of curveballs tonight.
Yeah. Big games this year. I mean, he did rush for 63 yards and a touchdown against Michigan, which is a pretty tough thing to do. Throwing wise, he's just not much of a threat. So Ohio State defensively is going to be able to kind of pin their ears back and just kind of go after the ball carriers. Maryland's whole thing is to run the ball. I mean, even with Hill as the quarterback, their goal is to bleed the clock as much as possible, give the opposing offense as little amount of possessions as possible to score points. And I think we'll just continue to see that. I mean, Ty Johnson's a big play guy for them, as we talked about. He's not listed on the depth chart. He's injured, but he's supposedly a game-time decision. Anthony McFarland is a redshirt freshman, 5'8", 193, so not the biggest guy, but he's been a big play guy all year. 104 carries, 724 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Notable games, he had 112 yards against Minnesota, 210 yards against Indiana. Then they've also got their short yardage guys. They've got a fullback. There's a fullback still in football.
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not just an offensive lineman?
that they call fullback.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Tayon Fleet Davis, 5'11", 226, along with Javon Leak, have kind of been their short yardage type of guys. They use Ty Johnson and Anthony McFarland to kind of get them downfield. Once they get to that short yardage, Tavon Fleet Davis and Javon Leak have combined for 10 rushing touchdowns between those two, kind of in that short yardage. They combined for 532 yards. So altogether, I mean, you're looking at almost over 1,700 yards of rushing offense for Maryland between Anthony McFarland, Ty Johnson, Fleet Davis, and Leak. So, I mean, it's just you add in a pogrom there, it's going to be a lot of running. And the Buckeye defensive line, the Buckeye linebackers got to play good like they did last week against Michigan State. And I think this is going to play good for Tough Borland. It's going to play right into the hands of Brendan White and Jordan Fuller back there at the safeties. And I think they're going to play good. I mean, Tavon Jacobs is a good wide receiver. He was a former Ohio State recruit, as many of you guys know. But he just doesn't have a quarterback to throw him the ball this year. So he's just not much of a threat. Against Texas, he had a good game, 5 for 73 and a touchdown. But against Michigan State and UM, he combined for 2 catches and 19 yards. The other guy who's kind of coming on lately, true freshman, Ja'Shawn Jones. He's listed as third string on the depth chart, but he's been getting more and more playing time for Maryland as time goes on. Last week against Indiana, he had 6 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. So it's not like that was in garbage time because Maryland and Indiana were playing close the whole time. So Ja'Shawn Jones, Tavon Jacobs can make things happen if they had a quarterback, but Pigram's not that guy.
Well, and the thing to remember here, for those of you that have watched football besides just Ohio State over the last couple of years, Matt Canada, the coach at Maryland now, is the former offensive coordinator from LSU. So if you kind of want to see what type of offense he wants to run, look at LSU over the last couple of years where they had like Leonard Fournette, and that's the offense that he's going to go with. The wide receivers are there when they need them. He's not going to air it out like an air raid offense. It's very much so, like you said, they're going to try to pound the ball and control the clock that way. So the difference is obviously Maryland has nowhere near the talent level that LSU had. So, I think this plays right into the strength of the Ohio State defense, especially the way that they've reacted and made the changes since the bye week. So I look for the defense to make some noise this week and have another solid game that really once again passes the eye test. So, anything else on the Maryland offense before we flip it over to the defense?
Nope.
All right, man. So looking at the Maryland defense, they got a couple guys here. Their defense has, again, not been overly great either, but they've got some guys that can make plays and have blown up the stat sheet. Starting out, their will linebacker, Trey Watson, leads the team in tackles. He's got 92 tackles. He's got a sack, a couple tackles for loss, but he's got 5 picks out of the linebacker position, which actually leads the team, which is, that's just indicating that he's made some plays here. Their middle linebacker, Isaiah Davis, is second on the team with 76 tackles. He's got a couple sacks. He just seems to be that solid middle linebacker guy that's just going to try to make plays. The other 2 guys that I had on my notes to mention out was their safety, Darnell Savage. I think he was about 4th on the team in tackles. I can't recall right now. I forgot to make that note of that. But he's got 4 picks. And then their cornerback, Tino Ellis, who's not really a tackling machine. He doesn't have a lot of picks, but he's had 11 passes broken up this season. I know you had 1 or 2 other guys that kind of stood out to you. Who do you see on the defense that could potentially cause some headaches for the Buckeyes when they're moving the ball on Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I had Trey Watson, too, who is their will linebacker. As I mentioned to you, he's transferred from Illinois, having a damn good year for a linebacker. Darnell Savage was on there, too. He's just a very solid senior safety for them. The other guy that I thought is having a really good year for Maryland this year is transfer from Auburn, defensive end Byron Cowart, 6'4", 293. 32 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, 2 INTs, and a forced fumble. So I think him along with the linebacker.
That's a hell of a season from a DN, by the way.
Yep. And so I think him along with Trey Watson and Isaiah Davis, that front seven, what they kind of create with their playmaking ability is going to be what causes the Buckeyes the most problems. So just getting pressure on Dwayne Haskins. If we don't see better offensive line play from Isaiah Prince, from Thayer Munford, from Malcolm Pridgeon, from all those guys up front, those are the guys that are really going to make things happen. I know like a lot's been made this week about Maryland's pass defense being 18th in the nation, whereas their rushing defense is only 64. So we think we have to like attack them through on the ground. The more and more I look into it and the stuff that I see in the game film that I've seen, like I'm not too impressed with Maryland's pass defense. As I kind of mentioned before, I think it's more of a factor of the Maryland offense keeping teams off the field and not allowing them to throw too much. I mean, when they do play good offenses, they do still give up a lot of passing yards. Texas threw for 263 against them. Michigan threw for 294 against them, and Michigan really doesn't throw for too many yards. Illinois threw for 261. Indiana threw for 243. So, I mean, I think realistically, you can count on Dwayne Haskins throwing for that 250 to 300 type of range and still allowing Ohio State to run the ball. So I think Maryland has a good pass defense, but I don't think it's quite as good as everyone has made it up to be, simply because I think Maryland's just done a good job of limiting plays.
All right, so looking at the over-under, we got the the first one I have. Again, I've established this is a very important key for Ohio State. Haskins, 60% on the completion rate. Is he over or under?
I'll go over this week.
I think he's going to get it too. I see at least a bit of a emphasis on just, again, making sure he has a solid game to get himself ready for Michigan. And I think that, they're going to try to, as we mentioned earlier, they're going to try to push him to that record early and do it in Maryland where he's from. Looking at the running backs, do we have 150 yards rushing this game?
I'm going to go definitely over on that one. I mean, rushing, they gave up 161 a game, but if you take away that Bowling Green game where they only gave up 19 rushing yards, they're giving up almost 180 a game, and they've given up 224 plus yards 3 of the last 4 games. So I'm going definite over on that one.
I'm going to go with you there also. Receiving core, do we have anybody that gets 2 touchdowns on Saturday?
Wow, man. Threw a wrinkle now. I was expecting yards. 2 touchdowns. I'm going to go with over. I think this is a game where they really need to get Paris Campbell involved a little bit. I mean, Paris Campbell is only averaging about 43 yards per game over his last 4 games. They need to get some momentum going there for Michigan. So I think over, and I think it'll be Paris Campbell.
I'll go with you on that one. I like that one. Defensive line, I know this one is a stretch. I don't think they're going to go over on this. I think it's going to be about the same result as last week. But does the D-line account for 2 sacks?
I'm going to go also under on this one, simply because I don't think Maryland's going to throw the ball too much. Yep. I mean, even with Kasim Hill, they were throwing the ball roughly 15 to 17 times per game, and they're not going to throw that much with Pagrom. So I'm going to go with under on that one.
Yep, definitely taking the under. All right, last one for you here. The defense, do we force 3 turnovers on Saturday?
Man, this one, that's a lot. I mean, 3.
That's a lot.
3 is a lot, but you got to think, I mean, sophomore quarterback making his first start this year, freshman running back. Gosh, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go over. I think this is the type of team that you can take advantage of. They're going to be running the ball a lot. They're youthful, inexperienced, and confident. arrogant defense that's going to hit them hard. So I'm going to go over.
All right, I'm going to take the push again on this one this week. I think it's going to be 3 turnovers. So that's where I'm going to go with that. All right, man, so it's time to pause real quick and come back with our Son of a Schmidt. Last chance to get anything in on Maryland here. You got it?
Nope, I'm still sorry about that commercial.
All right, so we'll pause for about 30 seconds. When we come back, we'll get into our Son of a Schmidt. We'll do our Schmidt picks, and then we'll get out of here. So hold on a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for your favorite weekly segment.
Son of a Schmidt.
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 All right, Brandon, it is time for a Son of a Schmidt rant. I know I've got mine lined up. What do you got for us? You want to go?
The thing I want to talk about, you promised that we wouldn't talk about.
I said, well, you're right. I'm not talking about it, but the floor is yours. Son of a Schmidt has no rules. That's the only rule. So go for it. Talk about clicking on that idiot's article. Go right ahead, man. I am game.
I'm just going to talk about it a little bit more. I'm sorry, because like I've said it earlier in this year, but like for the love of God, stop giving clicks to people that are simply looking for clicks. This dude is not giving you anything that you want to read. He is not out to please the Ohio State fan base. He is not out to be objective. He is not out to do anything except for get as many clicks as possible, make as much money as possible before his ass is fired for being such a raging douchebag. So stop clicking on his stuff, stop retweeting all of his articles, and just kind of move on with life. Like, God, I am so over this sorry ass person that claims to be a sports journalist. I mean, like, we don't even claim to be sports journalists, and I'm ashamed to be associated with them. Like, we are just two dudes that come out here and talk sports every week. Mike writes articles every week. I write them every now and then. I review all this shit. Like, we do it for fun. Like, we don't get paid money. We don't care about clicks. Like, I don't give a shit if 0 people click or 400 people click. This guy simply makes a living off of riling up Ohio State's fan base, getting 5 million morons to click on his articles, make him money, and then he just does the same thing a few weeks later. So, like, if you see it, just move on. I didn't read his shit today. I let other morons read his shit and then tell me what it said. And I'm not going to do it. So I'm just tired of him. I'm tired of Zach Smith. I'm tired of everyone. Like, God, stop getting so worked up by this guy when his only mission is to get you guys worked up. And I personally hope Urban Meyer sues his ass. I hope Ohio State sues his ass. I hope Trayvon Grimes' mom sues his ass, especially after she lost her job today because of this piece of shit writing an article about it. So, like, let's just move on. God, son of a Schmidt.
Okay, cool. Hook 'em. Yeah, there is nothing about that guy that makes me want to do anything but just throw a shit ton of bricks around his feet and toss him in the Olentangy. I don't want to read his stuff. I don't want to hear about it. I'm so sick of that bowel movement moving through the Ohio State fan base right now. So I agree with you 100%, man. So, all right, man. So on the flip side of that, I'm going to go in. I kind of led into this a little bit talking about Maryland's game against IU, but my son of a Schmidt this week is on the expectation that Ohio State is the class of the Big Ten, and therefore they are not going to have the awards given to them that they have rightly earned. There is no doubt in anyone's mind that watched any of the Ohio State-Michigan State game that Drew Chrisman was the most valuable player in that game. He dropped 5 punts inside the 6, if I remember correctly. Flipped the field, led to multiple Ohio State scores, he was the reason that Ohio State's defense turned it on in the second half and shut Michigan State down. Just a fantastic performance. And we get a bunch of crap as Ohio State fans because, the statement from Tressel years ago about how punting was the most important play. And, for the most part, we kind of have taken that and ran with it. Like we've tried to own it. We've had consistently really good punters. And when somebody gets shafted like Chrisman did, we take offense to it. But I started looking it up because I saw somebody said something about, Ohio State's punter did such a good job that he led to the opponent taking an automatic safety rather than trying to get the ball back to him and have him pin him back deep again. And yet he didn't get named Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week. And I started looking into it, and I kind of laughed because what it boils down to is not only did Ohio State get the screw job from the Big Ten media group there, but then I started looking at the whole Coach of the Year thing, right? And everybody's joked about how Kirk Ferentz can go 8 wins in a season, and he's the Big Ten Coach of the Year. Ohio State has not had a Big Ten Coach of the Year since Earl Bruce in 1979. In that time, Ohio State has won 6 division crowns, 14 conference championships, 2 national championships, and in 2012, they couldn't play in the postseason when they went undefeated. I get it that Ohio State is the class of the conference over the last 30-some years. You even take into account the Lloyd Carr, John Cooper era, Ohio State has set the bar for the Big Ten for our entire lives. But the fact that you have these guys that are that good and the media does not show that appreciation is a direct slap in the face. And that is something to get upset about. That is I don't know what's the right word for it. That's just not right, I guess. I don't know. There we go. We'll call it un-American. But, I understand the expectation is there and Ohio State's so good. But just because they're good, you shouldn't be punishing them for being as good as they are. We don't punish Alabama because Nick Saban has led Alabama to be so great since he's been there. Why do they allow it to happen in Ohio State? I don't understand that one bit. And for those of you that are handing out these awards through the Big Ten, the media, the conference itself, whoever it is, y'all need to get your shit straight. Son of a Schmidt.
Nobody can argue with that. Their award system is a joke.
It is. So, all right, man. Last pause here. We'll come back. We'll get our Schmidt picks. I'll get a final prediction for you on the game. So give us just a couple seconds. We'll be right back.
You are listening to the Sons of Schmidt podcast on the Ozone Radio Network, presented by Hayes and Cannon. The ORN is the online radio home of the Buckeyes Sloopcast, the Silver Bullets podcast, Across the Field, and of course, the Sons of Schmidt, with new episodes broadcast every day of the week. For more information, go to www.theozone.net. And now, back to the show.
So, Brandon, last week, we actually both did pretty well in our Schmidt picks. For as crappy of a week of college football as it was, there wasn't a whole lot of great games on the schedule. We had the Alabama game, the Clemson game, Iowa Northwestern, Central Florida Navy, Arizona State, and Ohio State games to pick from. The only one that was wrong was the Iowa Northwestern game. You had Iowa, I took Northwestern. They wrapped up the Big Ten West, who nobody predicted at the beginning of the season. Congratulations to the nerds. But that drops your season total, to 42-18. I'm back within 2 games of you. I'm at 40-20. So first games first, before we get into it here, let's go with this first one. It's near and dear to Ohio State's hearts because Coach Fickell is the head coach there. But UCF, who is number 11, plays Cincinnati this week. What do you got in this game?
Oh, man. This one's in Orlando, right?
I don't know. You sent it to me.
I know. Do you know off the top of your head? I'm pretty sure it's in Orlando. I don't know. Like, I figure at some point UCF
It is in Orlando, yeah.
to lose. So, like, I'm going with the Fighting Fickles.
Well, that's going to make two of us because I hate everything about UCF. As you know, we both were down there, and it is a joke of a school. So we're going to both take the Bearcats to end the UCF streak. So I am good with that one. The next game we got is number 22 Northwestern at Minnesota. What do you got in this one now that Northwestern has wrapped up the Big Ten West?
I think you got to go with Northwestern on this one. You never know what you're going to get with anyone in that West. Like, 1 week Minnesota's losing to, like, Austin Community College of the Blind, and the next week they're beating Iowa. So I'm going to go with Northwestern.
I'm a big fan of Pat Fitzgerald. He seems to have done it the right way at a school with limited funds and limited resources. And I'm going to take the Katy Tiger-led defense from Northwestern to knock off Minnesota this week. So definitely going to throw that one out there. One of the only top 15 games this weekend, number 12 Syracuse travels to South Bend to take on Notre Dame. What do you see in this game?
Syracuse is not the 12th best team, so screw them. And Notre Dame, I don't think they're that good, but Notre Dame is going to beat up on Syracuse, I think.
Yeah, I haven't been able to figure out how Syracuse is ranked 12, but as we've said all season, there's been teams in that ranking that make no sense to us. So
if you're ACC and you're SEC and you're 2 or 3 losses, you're going to be ranked high.
Well, and Notre Dame might as well be ACC too. So, yeah, I'm going to take the Fighting Irish in this game also. The next one, Duke goes to number 2 Clemson. I don't really expect that you're going to take an upset here, but what do you got in this game?
No, definitely not. I'm going to go Clemson on this one. They're playing some pretty good football right
Clemson
now.
is playing very good football. Absolutely. You're exactly right. We're going Clemson on that one. So far we've been chalk. All right, next game, number 16 Iowa State takes on at Texas, number 15 Texas.
Man, how is Iowa State number 16? All right, I'm going to go Texas on this one. I mean, I think Texas is a lot better than 15. They've dropped a few games here or there, but I think Texas, when healthy, has a really good team, and I think they're going to beat Iowa State.
Yeah, it's not so much – I mean, I'm not saying Texas is bad by any means, but it's not so much that Texas is great. It's more that they are a lot better than Iowa State is. So I'm taking the Longhorns here in this one also. A little ode to you here. I'm going to catch you on one of these again at some point. Arizona State at Oregon.
Man, my Sparky's playing some good football right now. They got Eno Benjamin, who is tearing up running the ball. You got N'Keal Harry outside. Defense playing good football. Oregon's kind of playing like crap right now. I mean, they are nowhere near playing their best football. Hebert's been struggling with some injuries here and there. It's in Eugene, where Eugene typically owns Arizona State, but I think Arizona State's playing some pretty darn good football right now, and I'm going to go with Arizona State.
All right, we finally got something here. I'm going to tell you right now, I think Arizona State is the better of these two teams right now, but I'm going to take Oregon at home. So just to mix something up. Now, the only game that matters, we've covered everything that's to be covered. Number 9, Ohio State travels to College Park to take on the Fighting Turtles of Maryland. What do you got, and what's your score prediction for me, brother?
Oh, man. I think Ohio State offense is going to have another good game. Total defense, Maryland's 30th in the nation, only giving about 343 yards. But against good teams, just like we kind of talked about earlier, they do kind of struggle. Texas put up 405 yards against them. Michigan put up 465 yards against them. Illinois, who's not a good team, but they got a good offense, put up 493 yards of total offense. You factor in Ohio State has put up 481 plus yards of total offense in 8 of their 10 games this year. I think Ohio State's offense is going to put up some points. I think they will focus on the run game. Like I said, Maryland's run game has been susceptible to a lot of yardage here lately, 224 plus yards in 3 of the last 4 games. So I think Ohio State offense has the ability to put up a lot of points. Also, I think Maryland's offense will keep Buckeye offense off the field as much as maybe they would like to be. So I don't think it'll be a close game. I think defense can play a good game, and they're going to focus on the rush game, and I think Ohio State wins 35-13.
Are you kidding?
No, that's what I got.
That's what I have.
Well, you better change.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and call a spoiler here. I'm not changing. So, for the very same reasons that you had mentioned, I think Ohio State's offense will not be on the field as much as they would like, but when they are, they will be able to do whatever they want. The lack of experience from the Maryland offense, I think, is going to hurt them, not just in their yardage, but in their ability to convert third downs and to score when it's time to. Ohio State is second in the Big Ten, and like I said earlier, and both third down conversions and from keeping opponents from getting third down conversions. So I think it will be a mildly annoying game as a fan to watch, because there'll be times that you want to pull your hair out, but I'm sticking with 35-13. Absolutely. So now the last question I'm going to ask you is the same question we ended last week's show on. Is there any way that Ohio State loses this game? And if so, what is it?
I think if they struggle to contain the run game, if they struggle to contain the mobile quarterback in Pogrom, they will have problems. I mean, I think Ohio State has a lot of momentum going into this game, and they need to keep that going. If Maryland's able to punch them in the face early on, and Ty Johnson returns a kick return like he did last year against the Buckeyes and Columbus, just little things like that. Dwayne Haskins throws picks. Maryland defense likes to pick off the ball between Trey Watson and Savage and all those type of guys. I mean, hell, they got a defensive end that has 2 picks. Like we get a situation like JT Barrett, what was it, first or second play against Iowa, throws the pick 6, and it kind of changes the whole game. Mm-hmm. That could lead to it. So Maryland's got the type of offense that if they get a touchdown early or get up by a touchdown or 3 points, they're able to bleed the clock as much as any other team in the nation, or better. And I think that's how Ohio State could lose. But no, I don't think Ohio State's going to lose this game. I don't think it should be that close.
I don't see it being something that it's going to happen, because obviously Ohio State is the better team. For me, the only way that it happens, and you started to touch on it, is going to be if Ohio State is looking forward to Michigan and they get punched in the mouth. If they come out, they're flat, they're not into this game, then it might be a bit of a hair raiser. But no, I don't see any way that Maryland wins this game Saturday either. So with that being said, is there anything else you got, man?
No, man. Looking forward to next week.
Yeah, next week's going to be a good one. So a couple of things that we wanted to mention. Next week's going to be a little oddball, because for the first time in, God, I can't even think about how long ago it's been now. There's going to be a bunch of us in Ohio. I'm going home. Brandon's going to be at home. We're going to try to record from Ohio this coming week. There might be some Facebook Live type things coming up at some point, getting a group of us all together. So just be watching all the different social media accounts that we have for that. Not just our personal ones, but the Sons of Schmidt account, the Ozone Radio Network. Looking to get together with a couple of the other guys like the Sloopcast guys and whatnot. So I do imagine there'll be some stuff come out of that. So just keep an eye on that. Again, Brandon, real quick, I know we talk about this all the time, but go ahead and tell people where they can find you on Twitter again.
Oh, man, you can find me on the Twitter machine at bzimmerman9. Yeah, it's nothing special. I'm not going to
Nothing
sell you some false goods. All right.
All right. So you can find me. I'm at mmeals, MMEALS. Let me see. Friday, you'll have the Big Ten things to know that I put out every week. Monday, before I pack up to leave back to Ohio, I'll have the Haze, Gaze, and Cannon Fodder. Both of those are on the Ozone Radio Network. Make sure you're keeping an eye out on the Ozone Radio Network for all the other shows. You got the Sloopcast, you've got the Silver Bullets podcast, the Buckeye Weekly, and, of course, the Sons of Schmidt. I'm so proud that I got that one right because I'm still not updating the plugins and promos that we have, so I'm still blaming Tony and Tom for that. Last chance, anything? I'm not giving you that chance. So go Bucks, OH.
IO.
Buckeye Nation, make sure you're getting the latest news and episodes from the Sons of Schmidt podcast. You can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Sons of Schmidt. You can follow us on Twitter at Sons of Schmidt, or email the show, sonsofschmidt@gmail.com. And look for us on Haze and Cannon at theozone.net.